Thank you for that very generous introduction, and it is an honor and a privilege to be here. People sometimes ask me, how did you get from growing up a typical material girl from West Los Angeles to becoming an international women's rights advocate fighting forced abortion in China? I think anyone who has dedicated their lives to ending the suffering of others has their own story to tell. You see, your pain holds the key to your purpose. In my case, it all started with an innocent question I pondered on the playground as a young girl. Who's better, girls or boys? At my elementary school, boys and girls separated themselves out at recess. The boys went and played kickball, which looked to me like a lot of fun. The girls, however, were consigned to playing Foursquare, which is a game I found inane. So one day I marched on to the kickball field and presented myself to the boys, and they actually allowed me to play. I held my own and then went to the PE teacher and said that we should have a girls' kickball team. He allowed me to do that, and I became the captain of the first all-girls kickball team at my school. This did not make me popular with the boys, but it did settle the question in my mind of who's better, boys or girls. I decided that there is no equality between the sexes. Girls are clearly better because we can do everything that boys can do, plus we can have babies. As I grew up, I lived out this idea. My crowning achievement, I got pregnant at the beginning of my third year of law school at Yale and still graduated as a top student. And then in triumph, I gave birth to our baby boy, Nico, soon after graduation. I began work as an attorney in a major law firm, and everything went as planned until my husband and I wanted to have a second child. I got pregnant, but then miscarried. I spent 2 days lying on the living room couch just bleeding away our baby. And I called my mother and cried, why should I get pregnant with a baby we so desperately want, who would be so well cared for, and then have that baby taken away? My mother, I'll never forget her words. She said, no one can understand why these things happened, but somehow, in a way that we can never understand now, God will use this for a purpose. I soon later had a second miscarriage and never had another child of my own. I walled off the pain of losing those babies for years and lived as though it had never happened. Then one day in the mid-90s, an email flashed across my computer screen. A woman from China had been forcibly sterilized, and she was looking for an attorney to represent her in her case for political asylum in the United States. This woman had been physically dragged out of her home, screaming and crying, held down to a table, cut open and had her tubes tied without anesthesia. And she had a massive infection, ended up with permanent back pain, abdominal pain, and migraines from that moment for the rest of her life. This forced sterilization under the one-child policy ruined her health forever. In the mid-90s, I knew that China had a one-child policy, but I never stopped to think how it was enforced. I was shocked to learn that it is enforced through forced abortion up to the 9th month of pregnancy, forced sterilization, and even infanticide, the killing of infants. And this is still true today. Now, every year, there comes out of China some kind of an announcement that they are easing the one-child policy, and I bet just about everybody here has read that China is easing the one-child policy. This is not true. What they have is they have these minor adjustments, and then they say that they're easing the policy. On January 1st of this year, some people who are themselves, they have one member of a couple as an only child, they can have a second child. Okay? That only affects about 5 million couples nationally in China, which is a drop in the bucket. And they have not dispensed with the core of the policy, which is the coercion. So the problem is not whether the government allows a woman to have one child or 2 children. The problem is that the government is telling people how many kids they can have, and then they are enforcing that limit with forced abortion, and that has not stopped. Women are being forcibly aborted in China right now as I speak. Then one day in 2003, personal disaster struck. I had to have bilateral mastectomies, but worse than that, I contracted one of those hospital superbugs, the MRSA staph infection, and it was the staph infection that really endangered my life. My husband wondered whether I was going to live or whether I was going to die. I had to have a special pump that pumped really highly toxic antibiotics directly in my heart for almost 10 weeks. I lost a lot of my hair, my kidneys, my liver, my immune system was affected. And I went overnight from being a high-powered litigation attorney in a major law firm to someone who was lying flat on my back and begging God to spare my life. I plunged into chronic fatigue and became completely disabled for 5 years. Facing death forces you to redefine your life. Suffering can either humble you or it can harden you. If you can stare into the face of eternity with a willingness to surrender and be changed, then you can emerge from the ashes of your former self a completely new creation. Money, power, prestige had meant the world to me as an attorney. Suffering transformed my goal from making money as an attorney to making a difference in the lives of the women and the babies of China. During these 5 dark years, I began reading the Bible cover to cover, over and over. One scripture sort of rose up out of the Bible above all the rest. It's Proverbs 24, 11 to 12. Deliver those who are drawn towards death, and hold back those stumbling to the slaughter. If you say, surely we did not know this, does not he who weighs the hearts consider it? He who keeps your soul, does he not know it? Will he not render to each according to his works? During my dark years, I prayed a dangerous prayer. I prayed that God would break my heart for whatever breaks his heart. Immediately, I felt led to pray for the women who, like my former asylum client, were being forcibly sterilized or forcibly aborted at that moment. I know what it's like to lose a baby, and their pain burned in my bones like an unquenchable fire. I researched endlessly, but I could not find a comprehensive analysis of China's one-child policy. Just a fact here, a fact there, data rubble. My mind began fitting that rubble together piece by piece like a repugnant puzzle until I realized in one appalling instant that all of the tragic consequences of China's one-child policy are causally connected. The first thing that struck my mind was the realization that what is unique about China's one-child policy is not abortion, but state-sponsored coercion. I realized that this is a unique issue that could draw together pro-choice and pro-life activists. No one supports forced abortion because it's not a choice. One woman, for example, was grabbed off the street, violently held down, forcibly aborted of her baby that was at 7 months. And then when the abortion was over, the doctor came into the room and told her that she needed to pay so that they could dispose of the body. She said she didn't have any money, so they took the body of that baby and laid it down next to her on the bed and told her to deal with it herself. Now, I have a photograph of that, but it was too graphic for breakfast. You can see it on my website. Beyond this, because of the traditional preference for boys, girls are selectively aborted in China. According to experts, between 160 and 200 million girls and women are missing in the world today because of sex-selective abortion. This is greater than the casualties of all of the wars of the 20th century combined. As a young girl, I had never dreamed that the answer to my innocent question, who's better, boys or girls, could be a death sentence for hundreds of millions of girls. Because of this gendercide, there is a shortage of women in China. There are 37 million more men than women living in China today. And what that is doing in turn is driving human trafficking and sexual slavery, not only in China, but in the surrounding countries. And the despair of the Chinese women has led China to have the highest female suicide rate in the world today. 590 women kill themselves every day in China. When I regained my strength, my husband and I sold our home and committed $50,000 to helping the women and the babies of China, to raise the visibility of this issue because no one was talking about it in 2008. That's when I founded Women's Rights Without Frontiers. I've gone from helplessly grieving for the victims of forced abortion to leading a movement to end it. I've gone from lying on my back in a sickbed to traveling the world to the U.S. Congress, the Vatican, all the European Parliament, British Parliament, Irish Parliament, Canadian Parliament, to bring this issue to the attention of world leaders. Through our Save a Girl campaign, we have a network of field workers inside of China who are able to identify women who are pregnant with girls and who are planning to have an abortion or who have recently given birth to a girl and who are being pressured to abandon that girl. So I'd like to show a couple of slides of our Save a Girl campaign. That's our poster child. We actually didn't save her. We found her on the internet. Okay, but the next one, we saved her, okay? So this girl is typical of so many. When she was born, her father and his parents wanted the mother to abandon her. And so we went to the mother, knocked on the door and said, please don't abandon your baby just because she's a girl. She's a precious daughter. We will give you monthly support for a year to help you support this baby. And that, just our intervention with the practical help is enough to save this girl. And I wake up every morning knowing, just being so happy that we are saving lives in China. Let's go to the next slide. This actually is not a girl, but it's a boy, and his mother was fleeing to escape a forced abortion. So she was going from village to village to village to stay one step ahead of the family planning police. And we were able to get a monthly stipend to her just to keep her alive for that time during her pregnancy. And then she gave birth to this beautiful baby boy. And God has blessed us with 2 new daughters from China. They are the persecuted daughters of pro-democracy activist Zhang Lin, who is jailed for standing up for human rights in China. With help from many brave people in the United States and China, including women's rights in China, my husband and I were able to get them safe passage to the United States, and we are now raising them as our own daughters. So I just feel like in God's economy, I had the 2 miscarriages, but now I have 2 beautiful, beautiful daughters from China. All this was done by the grace of God. Another crucial step in my faith journey was working with Mother Teresa. Her example of simple faith, self-sacrifice, and wholehearted, devoted service to the poorest of the poor was an example to me that made me really hunger to understand and to get to know the God that was the source of her faith. So, how did I get here? None of this would have happened if I had not had those miscarriages or if I had not faced death. But now I wake up every morning knowing that my work is literally saving lives in China, and for this I am eternally grateful. Like my mother said long ago, these things happen for a purpose. No one gets through life on this earth without intense suffering. What is the most painful experience in your life? Reach out to others who are suffering now in the way that you suffered then. Your pain holds the key to your purpose. If your heart is burning and you want to join me in the battle for the lives of the women and babies of China, then please come and see me after the breakfast. The mission is enormous and your help is needed. And you can come to a lunch on April 11th where I will be talking at more length about our work in China. But perhaps your calling is different. You can find your own calling because when you think about it, your heart will warm. If you fan that warmth, it will ignite a spark. And if you fan that spark, it will burst into a blaze that can set the world on fire. Thank you.